And then going forward, they exploit that, they install some systems. Now they are sitting within infrastructure. And sometimes we have hackers sitting within corporations' infrastructure for 6 months without being detected. So hackers sometimes have 6 months, half a year to just walk around doing what they want, figuring out which data they should steal, and then ultimately also exfiltrating the data and encrypting your organization. And that is it's a very slow process. So sometimes you spend there, and I mean, I've done it myself, right? Sometimes you sit there for 3, 4, 5 days, for a week, and you don't find anything until you find this one thing that you can then leverage. But now with AI, hackers are going to be quite happy because we can automate like 75% of that entire process, right? If we now look at figuring out potential targets, right? Rather than me having to sit there for days going through a list of who could be interesting to attack and what vulnerabilities could be in there, well, I just have AI go ahead and do all of that, right? Now we can have AI autonomously go through the internet trying to figure out which organizations could be vulnerable and then even trying to exploit that, right? So there's two things that are going to happen. Attacks are going to speed up significantly because we shorten our timelines, and at the same time it's driving down costs. And if we take a look at modern cybercrime organizations, they work like a business. They have a career page, they have an HR team, they have a support team. You can literally text them. If you have problems recovering your data, you can literally text them through the support chat. So for them, it's also a business thesis, right? So if we now see that they can do everything a lot faster, and they need less people to do that.
David, when you say significant, can you give us some numbers, right? 5 times, 10 times faster?
Well, honestly, from what I've seen from personal experience, it's definitely 10 times faster at least, because certain tasks that you spend an hour doing before, you just spend a couple minutes on it now. Even if we take a look at, and I think ChatGPT is a good example because you mentioned that. If you go to ChatGPT and you're like, oh, write me malicious code. Well, what is ChatGPT going to say? It's going to say no, right? But if you now go to ChatGPT and you're like, oh, ChatGPT, please write me a piece of software that goes into a Windows machine, encrypts all the data, deletes all the copies of the data, and sends me the only encryption keys, what is he going to do? He's going to say yes, because you never specified that this is for malicious purposes, right? So even all those systems that we are using can be used by threat actors as well, right? Let alone things that develop on their own to do that. So from a cybercrime business thesis, we're now going to see a lot more targeted attacks because you can analyze your targets in certain organizations a lot quicker with higher success probabilities because, well, they can just leverage AI to autonomously try and find vulnerabilities, which ultimately is a better return of investment for threat actors, right? Rather than me having to sit there for a day trying to find an outdated system and trying to put together various exploits to get into this enterprise, I'll just ask my cybercrime AI buddy, go ahead and try 100,000 different ways to get into this company on your own. Just report back if you get in. So return of investment for criminals is a lot better than before. So if we take a look at this graph of damage caused and attacks happening that is just accelerated over the past couple of years, well, it's going to accelerate further. The past couple of years were already quite impactful, seeing a lot more attacks happening and talk about $1 trillion in damages. That is accelerating so much faster now with short timelines. So to get to the other point of new attack vectors that people can leverage. And I mean, there's a lot of theory around what could they do or what are they going to do, right? But there's one case study I brought with me as well, which I think is quite interesting. So this happened in Singapore. And there was a finance employee in Singapore that received an email from the CFO. And the email was, oh, please send $25 million to this bank account. Well, obviously it's raising red flags, right? I mean, if you just get an email that says transfer $25 million, obviously you're going to start asking questions, right? Follow-up email comes in that is, oh yeah, we know, let's hop on a Zoom call, let's talk about this. I'll give you permission to send money in person. Email from the CFO. So the finance employee gets on a Zoom call, sits there, 3-4 people from the finance team, and obviously he knows how the CFO looks like and how he talks, right? He obviously knows the team that he's working with. So they talk about it, he gets the authorization, gets off the call, transfers $25 million. Every single person on the call, including the CFO, were all deepfaked. They never existed. So threat actors went ahead, took public data from various speeches and presentations that the CFO did, and they just generated this AI avatar to act and look and feel like the CFO to trick the finance employee. So next time you're on a Zoom call, how in the world do you know if that person on the other side telling you something is actually the person that you want to speak with. And it's quite interesting. So they never recovered that $25 million because it was, well, a legitimate transaction, right? The CFO, important CFO proved it. So we're going to see that going forward. And we already saw it with voice, right? We've already seen people being able to clone your voice. But this was now the first real time, and people theorized about something like that happening at some point, but now we saw it happen. So next time you're on the Zoom call talking about an important business decision or making certain deals, you really have to be careful. And something that, when I was speaking with GSK, that we were discussing whether that would make sense, it's just literally, we now need safe words with certain people to have kind of the second factor when we are speaking with them on the phone or in a Zoom call, to use that safe word to actually verify if that person on the other end is the actual person, because like just the looks and the voice is not enough anymore. And that is something that is just now accelerating because the technology is quite fresh, right? The technology is relatively new, but going forward, yeah.
Just a question on that. I work with an investment firm, and a lot of the meetings that we have on Zoom are investment decision meetings, right? And typically also in competitive processes where we are competing with 2 or 3 other investors to make an investment. And then obviously everything that is being discussed in that Zoom meeting will be, well, it would be very valuable for someone else to get to know that information, right? And in most of these meetings, we will invite more or less everyone in our firm to take part, at least in the first part of the meeting. So it's 100 people or something. So the question is then, how challenging is it for someone to get access to my calendar and then get access to the invite to that Zoom meeting and just be part of the Zoom meeting, just hiding under the name of someone else?
It's not hard at all. Quite funny story from Belfair in Bahrain. So Belfair got hacked, and then the board came together to talk about it. I mean, obviously, it requires a board decision on how to proceed after they got hacked, right? So they get on this board call. It's like 10 people in there, and well, everyone was talking. They know each other, and there's this one guy, camera off, in his Zoom call. They're like, oh yeah, he's from your team, right? No, he's from your. Turns out the hacker was in the Zoom call that the board had trying to figure out how to proceed. Because everyone guessed how he's from someone else's team, right? He's supposed to be here because, well, how else would he be in a board Zoom call, right? So that risk is definitely
So
there.
what do you do to protect yourself from stuff like that?
Well, if we take a look at getting access to your calendar, I mean, there's so much more to it, right? And that's where we come back to the basics of, well, do you update some secure infrastructure? But then on the other side, and it depends on how large the entity is, right? Because it holds true that at some point hackers will get in. And then the only 2 questions that remain is how quickly you detect it and how effectively can you respond to it, right? So a number of large organizations and all of the Fortune 100, I mean, they have 24/7 dedicated security teams doing nothing else than looking at those alerts and triaging them, which is the way to go, because otherwise, if you don't get this. So for me, cybersecurity is broken down into four different pieces. And the first one is visibility, right? You need to see everything going on. You need to see every person that's accessing your calendar, right? And where they access it from. You need to get all this data and all this information. Because once you see everything going on, then you can talk about how we actually protect it, right?
So what you're saying is that if you do what you're supposed to do, then you're going to be able to see that something's going on.
Well, there's not 100% security, but you're going to see a lot more, right? And the higher your investment bill is in cyber, the more it's going to cost for a threat actor to get in. So now if a threat actor is putting up their thesis, well, and you have a certain level of cybersecurity, they're going to look at your company and be like, oh, it's going to take me a week to hack into your company. It's going to take me 3 days to hack into the competition. So they're going to move away from your company and they're just simply going to hack the competition because it's so much easier, right? So we are never going to get 100% level of security. If certain groups want to get access to an organization, they will, right? And that's why, especially those in the Fortune 100 context, you have to talk about how do we keep certain nation-state threat actors on, right? How do we keep threat actors out that have unlimited budget and unlimited time to get access to your organization? But for most enterprises, it's really about, well, cyber criminals. And they're just going to move off.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry, jump back in. Just wondering, what do you do differentiate? Because there's an endpoint security, CrowdStrike, Breeze just bought by Google this weekend, 23 billion. There are United Cloud Security Solution, Fortinet, Palo Alto Networks, 100 billion market cap. They all have solutions. I want to understand what you offer differentiated.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to pitch.
Yeah, I don't understand where I'm coming from, the angle.
Absolutely, and that's actually what we're going to continue in the slides, where we have to talk about how AI will impact this, right, and how AI will help this. And it's quite interesting when you brought up, given that we have different vendors and that we have different platforms, because AI is not going to be this magic bullet. AI is not going to come in and you spend money on a cybersecurity AI solution and then all your problems go away. AI is actually going to come on top of a good security program to accelerate that security program and shorten those timelines that we now on the defensive side need to respond. If we take a look at the attackers, they're going to shorten their timelines, they're going to be faster. The question is, how do we do exactly that now on the defensive side, right? So AI will not come in and replace an existing security program, but it will come in and will make everything a lot more effective and a lot more enhanced. And one of the reasons we have to do that are those numbers that Arthur pointed out as well, right? And the World Economic Forum, they just updated their numbers this year. We now have 4 million unfilled cybersecurity positions worldwide. In the US alone, if you take a look at the US Bureau for Labor Statistics, we have 800,000 job openings for cybersecurity. So if we don't have those teams within our organization that holistically understand the issue, that are able to go ahead, implement and operationalize those solutions.
And all of this will be the challenge for the cybersecurity industry is most cybersecurity, all the people, they don't have too much knowledge about AI. For people who know about AI, they don't know cybersecurity. So the real gap actually is much larger than the 4 billion.
And if we take a look at where AI can come in the first initial stage, it's not going to come in and do everything on its own. The first initial stage that we're going to see now within the next couple of years is AI coming in to support our human teams. If we take a look at a large enterprise, I mean, you have so many activities going on, right? You have so many different things happening within your infrastructure. And where AI is really good is taking a look at a lot of data very quickly, trying to figure out potential patterns and potential relations, right? So now we can leverage, human teams can leverage AI to look at those alerts on scale within the enterprises and then automate certain processes that right now are done manually and that take hours, right? So in the end, if we take a look at responding to incidents and how quickly do we detect and respond to, we can reduce those timelines. And similar to how I brought the attack graph, I also brought how does it look like, and this is not the full in-depth, this is just more of a high-level overview. We get a lot of alerts in, we have to start analyzing them, we have to eliminate the false positives, we have to really narrow it down to what are the actual critical attacks that we have to look at. Because a security team is hit by a lot, and then they have to filter out what is an actual attack and we have to respond and investigate now. And the same way that threat actors can go ahead and shorten their timelines leveraging AI, the same way we can do that for, I'd say also about 75% of the current process, right? If we take a look at triaging alerts, if we take a look at correlating all the data that we have, we can now leverage AI to do that. And then going forward, which that's why I'm so happy about this from a defensive perspective, because within the coming years, the better the technology gets, we can actually leverage AI to also fully automate responding to attacks. So threat actors are going to get faster. They're going to get access to our organizations quite quickly. And then on the other side, now we can have an AI system detecting those clues of that attack and then responding to it. If we take a look at how it will, and it's a gradual process. I mean, AI is not going to solve everything today.